What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors walks onto a talk show expecting a normal conversation, only to be blindsided by a host who thinks he can say whatever he wants? It only took 32 seconds of disrespect for Samuel L. Jackson to do something nobody saw coming, something that would leave the entire studio in absolute shock. Picture this: the lights are bright, the cameras are rolling, and Samuel L. Jackson walks onto the set of Piers Morgan's talk show. The audience is excited. They're clapping, cheering, ready to hear from one of the biggest names in cinema. Samuel sits down, calm and collected like he always is. He's done 1,000 interviews before. This should be easy. Piers Morgan leans back in his chair with that smile he always has, the one that makes you think he's about to say something clever. But there's something different in his eyes tonight. Something that suggests this interview won't go the way anyone expects. "Samuel, thanks for being here," Piers says, his voice dripping with a kind of fake warmth that immediately puts people on edge. "Happy to be here," Samuel replies, relaxed, professional. The first few questions are normal enough. They talk about Samuel's latest movie, his career, the usual stuff. But then Piers shifts in his seat, and you can see it coming. He's got something on his mind, something he's been waiting to bring up. "You know, Samuel," Piers begins, leaning forward like he's about to share some great wisdom, "I've always wondered about actors like you. You play these tough characters, these action heroes, but in real life, you're just reading lines someone else wrote. Don't you ever feel like, I don't know, like you're not really being authentic?" The audience goes quiet. You can feel the temperature in the room change. Samuel's expression doesn't change much, but there's a slight tightening around his eyes. He's heard ridiculous questions before, but this one is different. This one is personal. "Well, Piers," Samuel says, keeping his voice steady, "acting is a craft. It's about bringing stories to life, connecting with people through characters. It's not about being fake. It's about being so real that people believe what they're seeing." Piers waves his hand dismissively, like Samuel just said something silly. "Oh, come on, mate. You're pretending to be someone you're not. That's literally the definition of being fake, isn't it?" Samuel takes a breath. He's trying to stay calm, trying to give Piers the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's just trying to be provocative for the camera. Maybe he doesn't realize how insulting he's being. "I think you're misunderstanding what acting is," Samuel explains, his tone still patient. "When I take on a role, I'm not being fake. I'm exploring human emotions, human experiences. I'm telling stories that matter to people." Piers laughs. Actually laughs, like Samuel just told a joke. Stories that matter? You run around shooting guns and saying cool catchphrases. Let's not pretend you're doing Shakespeare here. Now the audience is really uncomfortable. A few people gasp. This is live television, and Piers Morgan just disrespected one of the most accomplished actors of our generation. Samuel sits up a little straighter. His jaw tightens. "I've done Shakespeare, actually," Samuel says, his voice getting a little harder now. "I've done serious dramatic work. I've done comedy. I've done action. The range of work I've done speaks for itself." Piers isn't backing down. In fact, he seems to be enjoying this. He's got that look on his face, like he thinks he's winning some kind of debate. Sure, Piers says, waving his hand again. "But let's be honest. Most people know you from the action stuff, the blockbusters. You're basically a hired gun, reading whatever script pays the most. There's no real artistry in that, is there?" The room goes completely silent. Even the crew members are frozen, not sure what to do. This has gone way past normal interview banter. This is straight up disrespectful. Samuel stares at Piers for a long moment. You can see him processing what just happened, deciding how to respond. He could get angry. He could walk off right now, and nobody would blame him. But Samuel L. Jackson is a professional, and he's going to try one more time to have a reasonable conversation. "Piers," Samuel says slowly, carefully, "I don't think you understand what you're talking about. Every role I take, I put everything into it. I work with the director. I understand the character. I bring something real to it. Just because something is entertaining doesn't mean it lacks artistry. Piers rolls his eyes. Actually rolls his eyes on camera. Oh, please. You're getting a bit defensive, aren't you? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. You're a movie star, not an artist. There's a difference. That's it. That's the line. Samuel's entire demeanor changes. The patience is gone. The professional courtesy is gone. What's left is a man who has had enough of being disrespected on live television by someone who clearly has no idea what he's talking about. Everyone's thinking that? Samuel asks, his voice low and dangerous. Or is that just you? Piers senses he might have pushed too far, but instead of backing down, he doubles down. That's what entitled people do when they realize they've messed up. They dig in deeper. I'm just being honest, Piers says with a shrug. Someone has to say it. You Hollywood types get so precious about your craft, but at the end of the day, you're just entertainers. Overpaid entertainers at that. The audience is dead silent now. A few people look like they want to say something, but nobody does. They're all watching Samuel, waiting to see what he'll do. Overpaid, Samuel repeats, nodding slowly. Okay, I see what this is. What is it? Piers asks, that smug smile still on his face. This is you trying to make yourself feel important. By tearing down someone else's work, Samuel says, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. You sit here behind this desk, asking questions, giving your opinions like they matter. But what have you ever created? What have you ever built? When's the last time you did something that required actual skill or talent? Piers's smile falters for just a second, but he recovers quickly. I'm a journalist. I hold people accountable. I ask the tough questions. Samuel laughs, but there's no humor in it. Tough questions? You're not asking tough questions. You're being disrespectful because you think it makes good television. You think insulting your guests makes you look smart or edgy or something. But all it does is show everyone watching that you're insecure. Piers's face is turning red now. He's not used to being challenged like this, especially not on his own show. Now hold on a minute, Piers starts, but Samuel cuts him off. No, you hold on. I came here to talk about my work, to have a conversation, but you had to make it about yourself. You had to try to tear me down to build yourself up. That's not journalism. That's just sad. The tension in the studio is thick enough to cut with a knife. The crew is looking at each other, not sure if they should keep filming or cut to commercial. The audience is completely silent, watching this unfold like a car crash they can't look away from. Piers tries to regain control of the situation. I think you're being a bit oversensitive, he says, attempting to sound reasonable. This is just a conversation. If you can't handle a little criticism, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. And that's when something shifts in Samuel's eyes. That's when everyone watching knows something big is about to happen. A little criticism, Samuel says quietly. You called my entire career fake. You said there's no artistry in what I do. You called me overpaid. And now you're telling me I'm oversensitive? Piers opens his mouth to respond, but Samuel keeps going. You know what the real problem is? People like you. People who think they have the right to judge everyone else, to tear down their accomplishments, to mock their passion. You sit here in your little bubble, thinking you're so clever, so important. But you're not. You're just a guy with a microphone and an inflated ego. The audience is stunned. Nobody moves. Nobody breathes. Piers tries to laugh it off. Well, this has certainly gotten intense, hasn't it? Maybe we should take a break. No, Samuel says firmly. No break. You wanted to have this conversation, so let's have it. You think I'm just a hired gun reading scripts? Let me tell you something about those scripts. They're written by people who pour their hearts into their work. They're directed by people who have a vision, a dream they're trying to bring to life. And actors like me, we take those words and we make them real. We make people feel something. We make them think, make them laugh, make them cry. That's not fake. That's not meaningless. That's art. Piers is clearly uncomfortable now, shifting in his seat, looking at his producers off camera like he wants them to step in. I didn't mean to suggest, Piers starts, but Samuel cuts him off again. Yes, you did. You meant every word. You wanted to belittle what I do because it made you feel superior. Well, congratulations. You've shown everyone watching exactly who you are. Now that's unfair, Piers protests, his voice rising. You're putting words in my mouth. Am I? Samuel asks. Let's review. You said I'm not authentic. You said what I do isn't real artistry. You called me overpaid. Those are your words, Piers, not mine. The host is scrambling now, trying to find a way to spin this, to make himself look better. I was simply trying to have an honest discussion about the nature of fame and celebrity culture, Piers says, his voice taking on that defensive tone people use when they know they've messed up. No, you were trying to boost your ratings by being controversial, Samuel fires back. You were trying to create a moment. Well, you got one. Happy? Piers straightens up in his chair, trying to reclaim some authority. I don't appreciate being spoken to this way on my own show, he says stiffly. Samuel stands up. The movement is so sudden, so decisive, that it sends a ripple through the entire studio. The audience gasps. The crew freezes. Piers's eyes go wide. Your show, Samuel says, looking down at Piers. This might be your show, but that doesn't give you the right to disrespect people. That doesn't give you the right to insult someone's life work just because you can. Sit down, Piers says, trying to sound commanding, but failing miserably. We're not finished here. Yeah, we are, Samuel says calmly. I'm not going to sit here and let you talk down to me for another second. I've got better things to do with my time. Piers is on his feet now, too, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. You can't just walk off my show, he says, his voice getting louder. That's incredibly unprofessional. Samuel actually laughs at that. A real, genuine laugh that somehow makes the situation even more tense. I'm unprofessional? That's rich coming from you. You spent the last 10 minutes insulting me and now you're upset that I'm leaving? I was doing my job, Piers insists. Your job is to interview people, not attack them, Samuel shoots back. There's a difference. Maybe you should learn it. The two men are standing there, facing each other, and you can feel the entire studio holding its breath. This is unprecedented. This doesn't happen on talk shows. Guests don't just walk off. They don't call out the host. They definitely don't do it like this, with this much fire and conviction. Piers points his finger at Samuel. If you walk off this set, you'll never be invited back. Samuel looks at the pointing finger, then back at Piers's face, and he smiles. It's not a friendly smile. Do I look like I care? Samuel asks. Do you really think I want to come back here after this? You've shown me exactly what kind of person you are, and what kind of show this is. I'm good. You're making a huge mistake, Piers warns, his voice shaking slightly. No, Samuel says, his voice steady and sure. The mistake was coming here in the first place, but I'm fixing that mistake right now. He starts to walk toward the exit. The cameras follow him. The audience is completely silent, watching this historic moment unfold. Piers is standing behind his desk, looking lost, looking small. Samuel! Piers calls out, desperation creeping into his voice. Samuel, come back here. We're on live television. Samuel stops walking. For a moment, everyone thinks he might turn around, might come back, might give this another chance. But instead, he just turns his head slightly, not even looking fully at Piers. I know we're on live television, Samuel says. That's exactly why I'm doing this. So everyone can see what happens when you treat people with disrespect. And with that, he walks off the set. Just walks away. The cameras don't know what to do. They swing between Piers, who's standing there looking completely stunned, and the door that Samuel just walked through. The audience is frozen. Nobody's clapping. Nobody's gasping. They're all just sitting there, processing what they just witnessed. Piers finally sits back down, trying to compose himself. He looks directly at the camera, attempting to salvage something from this disaster. "Well," he says, his voice tight, "that was certainly unexpected." But nobody's buying it. Everyone watching knows exactly what happened. They saw a host who thought he could say whatever he wanted get called out by someone who refused to put up with it. They saw arrogance meet dignity, and dignity won. Piers tries to continue the show, tries to move on to the next segment, but it's pointless. The show is over. Everyone knows it. The crew knows it. The audience knows it. Piers knows it, even if he won't admit it. In the control room, producers are panicking, trying to figure out how to handle this. This is live television. This is going out to millions of people, and their host just got completely dismantled by a guest who had every right to be angry. Back on set, Piers is shuffling papers, pretending to look at notes, doing anything to avoid addressing what just happened. But he can't escape it. The silence in the studio is deafening. One audience member starts clapping. Just one person. Then another joins in. Then another. Within seconds, half the audience is applauding, not for Piers, but for Samuel, for standing up for himself, for refusing to be treated poorly, for showing that respect matters, no matter who you are or where you are. Piers's face goes from red to pale. He realizes what's happening. His own audience is turning on him. They're supporting the guest who walked off, not the host who drove him away. "Please," Piers says into his microphone, trying to quiet the applause. "Please, let's maintain some professionalism here." But the word sounds hollow coming from him now. Professionalism. After what he just did, after how he just acted, that word means nothing. The applause continues for a few more seconds, then gradually dies down. The audience settles back into their seats, but the atmosphere has completely changed. They're not here to support Piers anymore. They're here to witness the aftermath of his colossal mistake. Piers clears his throat. "As I was saying," he begins, trying to move forward, "we have another guest scheduled for later in the show." But his voice lacks conviction. His eyes keep darting to the door Samuel walked through, as if he's half expecting him to come back, to give him another chance. But that's not going to happen. Everyone knows it's not going to happen. Behind the scenes, staff members are whispering to each other. Some are shocked. Some are trying not to laugh. Some are genuinely concerned about what this means for the show. But all of them know one thing for certain. They just witnessed something that will be talked about for years. In that moment, when Samuel walked off, he didn't just leave a talk show. He made a statement. He showed that there are lines you don't cross, things you don't say, ways you don't treat people. He showed that fame and success don't mean you have to tolerate disrespect. And Piers showed everyone exactly what happens when you let your ego write checks your talent can't cash. He thought he was being edgy, provocative, interesting, but all he did was reveal his own insecurity, his own need to tear others down to feel important. The studio is still quiet, the cameras are still rolling, but the show is already over. It ended the moment Samuel stood up and decided he'd had enough. Everything after that is just noise. Just Piers trying desperately to pretend he's still in control of a situation that slipped through his fingers the second he decided to be disrespectful instead of respectful. This is what happens when you mistake cruelty for cleverness, when you think insulting people makes you interesting. This is what happens when you forget that the person sitting across from you is a human being with feelings, with pride, with a lifetime of work they're passionate about. Samuel L. Jackson walked into that studio as a guest. He walked out as a legend, not just for his movies, but for his dignity, for knowing his worth, for refusing to be diminished by someone who should have known better. And Piers Morgan, he'll have to live with the fact that he had one of the biggest stars in the world on his show, and he blew it. Not because of a disagreement, not because of a difference of opinion, but because he couldn't help himself. He had to be condescending. He had to be dismissive. He had to push and push until something broke. What broke was the interview. What broke was any semblance of respect. What broke was Piers's credibility as a host who knows how to treat his guests. The show eventually ends. Piers signs off with his usual closing, but it sounds empty. The audience files out quietly, talking amongst themselves about what they just saw. The crew starts breaking down the set, their conversations hushed and serious. And somewhere, Samuel L. Jackson is probably getting on with his day, satisfied that he stood up for himself, that he didn't let someone belittle his life's work. He doesn't need Piers Morgan's show. He doesn't need Piers Morgan's approval. He never did. That's the power of knowing your worth. That's the strength of having real confidence, not the fake kind that comes from putting others down. Samuel walked off that set with his head held high, leaving behind a host who learned a very public, very painful lesson about respect.